Welcome to the Work the System podcast, where we help entrepreneurs make more and work less using systems. And I'm your host, Josh Fonger. And today we have special guest, Jenny Davis. Jenny has the quote, "The quickest way to innovate is to take lessons from one world and apply them to another." She was the fastest woman in Scottish sprint cycling. As a Commonwealth Games medalist, Jenny understands what it takes to envision, plan, train, compete, and thrive on and off the track. Using timeless principles, she has successfully created and led change management and continuous improvement programs for teams as small as 5 and up to business units 1,500 plus. And I'd also like to mention that Jenny is WTS certified. So she's going to be sharing about the consulting work she does and how to apply business principles to, sports principles to business and how to set up systems so you can scale. So again, welcome Jenny to the show.
Thanks, Josh, for having me. I'm a big fan of the show. I know I said earlier that I think I might have listened to just about every single one that you've done so far over the years. So it's a nice change to be on the speaking side for once.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have you. Excited to have you here. My goal today is to learn from you, so you get to be the expert. So Jenny, why don't you give us the backstory? How did you go from the sports world to the business world, and why don't you give us the story there?
Sure. A quick skim is so I actually had 2 sporting careers. I had 15-ish years as a judo player and fought for GB and Team Scotland kind of from youth, junior and into my senior years. I took a gap year in my last year of university and doing health psychology away from sport just to try and make sure that I finished with a good grade and I had the right priorities, and ended up through kind of a bit of a talent spot through a strength and conditioning coach that I was using that was working with track athletes. That's on the velodrome cycling for those of you who aren't familiar with the language. They were working with track athletes and spotted some kind of potential parallels between what they were producing in the gym and what I could. So I then had, I think it ended up being a 12-year career as a track athlete, raced all over the world for GB and Team Scotland again. And kind of in between, in sports, a lot of the cycles that you have are in 4-year cycles with Olympics and Commonwealth. I think your equivalent's the Pan American Games. So you kind of have these ebbs and flows and ups and downs of when you need to peak and when you build. And in between a downtime after one of those big competitions, I got asked to present how I improved my cycling performance in a business that I was working with at the time. So I presented some really simple principles and gave some cycling examples. And at the end of the presentation, the senior leader in the room asked if I felt those principles could be applied in the business. And I said yes, because they seem universal to me. And they pulled me out of the role that I had at the time and asked me to drive and find some improvements in the business. And that's what I've done ever since. So that was 7 or 8 years ago. From really, I started in a really small team and I've ended up working with much bigger business units or smaller companies in their own right. Right through from what's their vision, strategy and goal, helping them stabilize their business and cut out all that firefighting that you talk about. And then once their business is stabilized, what do they want to do next in terms of their customers, blowing their socks off and really position themselves in the market so that their competitors can't touch them. So it's been it was not a journey that I planned to go on. I've kind of just gone with the flow and taken the best of what I could from 2 different sporting worlds and applied them across different industries in the workplace and in business.
Well, that's a pretty amazing story. So with what you did in sports, and then you go to business, what are some of the key principles that you think business owners or companies are missing? Like what are they not seeing, but you can see from the outside?
I think there's a couple of key things. So the first is that the top sports teams / sports athletes are absolutely crystal clear about what they want to achieve and the goals that they have. And when I say crystal clear, I don't mean like a one-liner. I mean they can tell you in detail what it tastes and feels like and what their business is going to feel like for their customers. Well, you know, for sports athletes, it's about what their life's going to be like. They have a really clear understanding of, once they have their goals, they backward engineer and figure out what they need to do to get there, and understand what their current state is. So for me, when I moved from judo into track cycling, I had an ambition of racing at Delhi Commonwealth Games back in 2010. I think at the time that was 3 years away. I openly said that to a coach who started laughing at me because they obviously felt it wasn't achievable. But I figured out what I needed to do to get to that position. And then I just every single week built on that. And, you know, I had ups and downs like everybody else. But eventually ended up qualifying for that event unexpectedly. And me and my team sprint partner both raced at that event and won a silver medal for Team Scotland. So not only did we go, but we also won and contributed to the medal tally for our country at the time. So I think number one is being really, really clear with great attention to detail on what their company is about, what they want to achieve. So in your wording, Josh, it's the strategic objective.
Mm-hmm.
Not a one-liner, like a proper in detail, what do you stand for? Clear understanding of current state. And then, you know, there's a lot of other things that the teams do. Team Sky did an operating principles. They have a document that hangs in their team bus every time they do the Tour de France, which is your equivalent of the operating principles. And you know, for athletes, it's about routine, and a lot of it's about compound effect and doing the same things day in, day out. And that's kind of a system in a slightly different way. So that's some of the main things. I think the big difference between the really, really successful ones and those that kind of sit in the middle is the attention to detail on those key steps.
Okay, so I want to explore this idea of compound effect. So you're doing something, and then explain what that means. You're just doing it again and again and again, or yeah, why don't you expand on that a little bit?
Sure. So the compound effect is where, I think a really good way to explain it is kind of health and fitness. So if your goal in life is to, you know, to hit a certain weight, or to be a certain level of leanness, or maybe it's about competing getting a certain time in an event, you're not going to hit that by just doing one session in the gym. You're probably not going to achieve it by doing 2 or 3 or 4. The only way you're going to be able to achieve some of those goals that are a bit more lofty is if you put the effort in consistently every single week. And by doing that, you might only be gaining a tiny amount each time you do it. But when you compound all of those together into 100 sessions at the gym, and 100 times you've, you know, avoided crisps or whatever it is that people want to eat, then when you compound those things all together, the gain can be big. So in business, you know, it might be a big issue just now is mobile phones, notifications, massive distraction. And I took a conscious decision last year that the first hour of my day I wouldn't touch this, and it was really hard for a couple of weeks, because it's kind of an addiction, and you want to go to it. But the hour that I saved for the first couple of weeks, I had to kind of fight it, and I would use that time to focus on what I wanted to achieve for the day and plan my priorities. And I used it to get really clear about what was important and what I needed to do. And that was powerful, once or twice or three times. But doing that for 100 days has had an exponential difference in the results that I've been able to achieve, but only because there's been consistency and that compound effect of every single day doing little things, which then add up to a much bigger gain in the future. So it's applicable everywhere in your life where you want a result and you can't just get an instant. It's not instant, where you need to put effort in, time and effort, or money or energy, and the compound effect is what helps you achieve that.
So how does, and this is going to tie into your next point, which is the attention to details, because oftentimes I'll work with somebody and we'll make a change and say, oh, good, now I have it. It's all set up with a system. But I'm letting them know that there's still about 50 things they could do to make this better. Mm-hmm. And do you think that, but they don't care. They say, I want to go to the next fire. Are people not paying attention to details because they don't know what details to look for, or because their standards are just low? And I'm assuming your standards are high because you obviously went to the top, the top in your, mm-hmm. in your arena. Mm-hmm. So are people not into details because they have low standards, or just because they don't know what details to look for?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. So I can send the link across. There's a really, really good story about in 2018, Chris Froome won. There was a certain stage where he was a couple of minutes behind, which in the Tour de France, being 2.5 minutes behind the leader with 3 stages to go is an absolute mountain to climb, no pun intended. Mm-hmm. And he won that stage, and Team Sky published what their strategy was for him winning that stage. And it was absolutely unbelievable. The attention to they won it because of the attention to detail. And I'm an elite athlete. I've been in elite sport for 20 years, and I've worked with British Cycling, who were the main team who then went on to run Team Sky. But I had no idea how deep they went to find those small gains, which when you compound them all together means much bigger. So there's a really good story. I can send the link across to put on the website and Facebook, which will help people understand from a sporting point of view, how important, for that sport, the small margins is everything. So I think that's one good example. I think, it's down to maybe people like me and yourself and others to try and help provide some examples and stories of, the attention to detail, and where through a focus on it on a daily and weekly basis, actually that's where the gains come from. So the saying overnight success, that's not true. There's athletes all over the shop, as successful business leaders. It appears like they come from nowhere and suddenly, appear on scene. But the truth is, some of these people have been working behind the scenes for 15 years, just plugging away every single day. So I think it's a mix of not understanding what it takes, and maybe people just, I'm not sure, maybe it's just they're quite happy in their own little bubble and they're happy to go along like that. My view is life's too short to feel like that. You know, you only got one, you got to make the most of the time that you've got. So why not strive to be better, you know, yourself, for your family, for your friends, and also for your customers and your colleagues in your business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great point, great story. And the other thing I'm noticing is that people, it's more fun to jump onto something that might be easier than to do the hard work to take, you know, what is 80% good and make it 99% good. Like that, that's hard. And most people are like, rather just jump to something else before they put in the hard work. Now, I know this
shiny object syndrome.
Exactly. Well, that's what we say. Our work system is just for mature business owners, people who are mature enough to know they really have to get serious about things. Now, the other thing as I was reading your bio was this approach that you take to fixing companies, you know, stabilizing them, you know, getting things organized, and then this customer delight phase. Can you share a little bit about what that phase looks like with the business?
Sure. So it tends to be most of the time when I get called in to support a company or a business unit, it tends to be because there's this raging backlog, or there's some big commercial fee that the business is going to get hit with, and they need somebody to help solve the big problem and make it go away. And you know, it's a very reactive state. It's nice to feel, I think Sam talked about in his book, that it's nice to feel like you're the person that's, you know, you're the lead firefighter and you're putting it out. But ultimately, I'm a big believer in driving your own destiny and being proactive and getting the fires before they even occur. So my aim with the business, with businesses that I work with, is I'm called in to help with the firefighting, and maybe the senior leaders don't have any time, they don't have any headspace to be able to make really smart, proactive decisions. So phase one for me is about helping fix the problems that are right in front of their face and create some time and headspace for them. And then once that fire's put out, is to help encourage them to think about what's possible within that system or within their business. And you know, it's a real bugbear of mine. It just now, over the last couple of years, it feels like companies' standards in terms of customer service has gone down. And you know, I love it when a company blows my socks off, and I'm delighted, and I become a raving fan. So once a business has been stabilized, the next phase for me, if they're up for it is to help them move to that, blow their customers' socks off, and absolutely delight them and turn them into raving lunatic fans who don't want to go anywhere else, because of the experience that they offer them and how it makes them feel. So that's where the juice and the excitement for me comes from. But sometimes it's a mix of that. What do business owners need and what do they want? Can be two separate things. So stabilize phase is about cost reduction, creating time and headspace. And then the next phase is the exciting, proactive energy. And that's where market position and you know, exponential growth and customer numbers, and your marketing budget can shrink if your customers are raving about you because your recommendations go through the door. And there are ways to get free publicity and things if you focus on absolutely making their experience delightful. So that's kind of the different phases I go through. My ideal world is to help somebody go from really bad, stressed, just had enough, to fix and stabilizing, and then they see the potential of what they have and just stoking the fire and helping them get there as quickly as we can. So everybody's much happier, and a lot of their problems disappear because they're being proactive about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me change gears a little bit, Jenny. So one question we like to ask all of our guests is about a system, either a system they put into place in their own life or a system they put into place into a business. Now, of course, the systems, as Sam would say, are always there, but most people don't see them, and therefore they don't manage them or take control of them. So can you think of any company you've worked with that you help them identify a system and kind of got it straightened out?
Sure. There's probably two. One from a personal point of view is really getting control of your morning routine system. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's been, you got to test it and tweak it and see what works for you, because what works for me might be different for you. I know you've got a big family and kids that like to mess around on your computer and cause noise and stuff. So I think it's important for everybody that you start the day right and you have you get into a rhythm and some nice habits that will help set you up for success during the day. So that's one from a personal point of view. I have my water in the morning. I usually don't touch this phone for at least an hour. I got my pen and paper and a couple of key questions that I ask, and I've got my to-do list with some of my goals and stuff that sets me up for the day. So I'm really clear there might be 50 things that I want to achieve over a longer period of time, but you can't do work on all of them at the same time. I might have two focuses for today. So that's the personal one. And I guess from a business point of view, I think the latest one that I've been working on, we had a big business unit that had a really, really big backlog. And when we looked at how much volume they had coming in and how much that they had going out, it meant the backlog was going to continue to grow quite significantly. I think it was like 25%. It was growing by every single month. So the system that we implemented there was all to do with measures. So they didn't have any concept of, they knew when stock was being delivered that there was a hell of a lot of stuff coming in, and they knew that there was a big mountain because it was physically there. They could see it growing, but they didn't have any concept of the actual volumes. And this problem is actually developed over 15 months. But it was just like it's that compound effect. So it was like 3,000 of these things every month was growing. Now they've got 50,000 of these big bulky inventory just sitting in this warehouse that they're supposed to be getting rid of. So the system that I helped them implement, first of all, was about understanding what's coming in so they could clearly understand what their stock position is and what's going out. And then when we understood that the in and out didn't match, we started looking at the system and making tweaks and changes and making some improvements. And, as that's progressed, we've been able to increase and bring them into balance much better. So it's kind of been like metrics, I think, has been the main one, which I think is really important and is another thing that lots of athletes need to use. You can't get better if you don't know what your starting position is and what your end position needs to be. So that's a metrics one that was the most important one they needed in their business that they didn't have.
Yeah, that's a great story. Inventory controls, fun stuff. All right, so what's one question that I didn't ask you, Jenny, but I should have asked you? I know there's a lot of places we could have gone. So anything that I missed in the questioning?
I'd say it's probably less of a question, more of something for for those listening to think about. So I kind of alluded to it earlier. I'm a big believer that life is short, it's precious. You've only got so much time here. You never know how much time you're actually going to have. And it's too short to be stressed out, to not be spending time with your family and friends and doing the things that you enjoy. Life's too short for that, being reactive all the time. So I'd ask people to just have a think about, there is another way. Work the system is one of the ways that you can take to help you move from that reactive, busy, but not maybe achieving the results that you want to achieve. And with a little bit of time and effort, the promised land is there. It just takes the courage to take that decision in the first place and do it. So my to end on it, I would say life's too short. Don't waste any more time. It's possible to move from where you are just now to where you want to be. And there's people here like Josh, myself, and others out there that can support you in that journey. So go for it. There's nothing holding you back.
That's great advice, inspiring, and spoken from somebody who's reached the top. Jenny, where can people find more about you or find out ways to work with you?
Sure. So I've got a special page on my website for the listeners. It's www.strivechange.org/work-VIP. And I've got a checklist on there to help people understand kind of the really summarized steps of moving away from stress and busyness to first control and then world-class customer service. So the checklist is on there for people if they're interested in finding out a bit more.
Why don't you say that again? strivechange.org/ what was the end, Jenny?
Work VIP.
Work VIP. All right. Yeah. Well, go ahead and check that out, everybody. Jenny, I want to say thanks again for being here. I know this is your Friday night, or your Thursday night, so thanks for being here late. Appreciate it. Learned a lot, and hopefully the audience did as well. Next week, stay tuned. We'll have another expert like Jenny on, or one of my certified consultants, which Jenny is also one of those, or maybe a author, speaker, who knows, but somebody's going to help you improve your business so you can make more and work less. And if you want a copy of that book right there behind me, Work the System, feel free to download it for free at workthesystem.com. Or if you want a copy mailed to you for free, we mail it one a week. Just give us a review, give us a screenshot, email it to info@workthesystem.com, and we will be mailing out one book a week to the lucky winner. Otherwise, thanks again, everybody, for joining us, and we'll see you next week.